On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo! And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Week 3, the NFL season is here, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finally play a game in Tampa, Florida, as they will host the visiting Green Bay Packers in Raymond James Stadium. 4:25 p.m. kickoff for that one. These two teams met way back in 2020. It's almost crazy to think that the first time they played in the Brady era was 2 years ago now, but the Bucs played them twice in 2020, got the better of them both times. They did not play in 2021, but this should still be a very entertaining game. Two of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it under center, Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I expect some more fireworks this week.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, when these two teams and these two quarterbacks face off, it's going to be a high-profile matchup, and you're looking at it. The Packers can go over 500 after they lost to their opening week. They were able to bounce back with a win against Chicago, and then the Bucs can go 3-0 for the first time in forever. They've been 2-0. They were 2-0 last year, and they were also 2-0 in 2018, but they haven't been 3-0 in a very long time. So they're chasing that right now, and I think it's a big game for both teams, as well as, I talked about this a little bit last week, but the NFC playoff picture right now, it's a week 3 game. It is what it is. It's, we're recording this on September 23rd. Like, yeah, it's early, right? But come week 16, week 17, you might look back at this game and it might have huge implications for playoff seeding potentially. So this is a game that I think both teams are going to want to win, because, if you own that head-to-head tiebreaker over a certain team, that could really help you down the line.
Yeah, and we also talk about the Buccaneers and how tough their schedule is this year. This is the third out of just a brutal 4-game stretch to open up the season, and the confidence that they have going into this one, knocked off New Orleans in the regular season finally last week for the first time since 2018. They're now 2-0. So a win this Sunday. I know you've got the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes the following week. That's going to be something we'll have plenty to talk about, but I mean, it guarantees that worst case scenario, if the Bucs win this Sunday, they come out of this stretch 3-1. And if you would have told a lot of people predicting the season before the year started, hey, Bucs are going to come out of this stretch 3-1. If you would have told a lot of fans that, I think everyone would have been more than excited, because, I mean, this is a brutal start to a brutal schedule, but the better shape you can come out of this, I think the better that's going to do for their confidence in the long run.
Yeah, and you and I in the season predictions both had 2-2 to start the season. So obviously that can still happen. But it's almost like you'd be disappointed with 2-2 at this point, because that would mean losing 2 straight ball games. So if you're able to come out of that stretch 3-1, yeah, that's very good. I even think 2-2, while losing back-to-back games would be disappointing, 2-2 would not be the worst thing in the world with that schedule. Like I said, you and I both predicted 2-2, and we both had the Bucs winning a lot of football games, so it's not a huge deal. However, starting off 3-1 with this schedule and what you have coming up, it would be a huge boost. And like I said, their confidence has to be an all-time high right now to be able to go out and beat the Saints, something you haven't done in the regular season in 4 years. Your confidence as a team. I know a lot of those guys, like, they weren't here, they weren't in Tampa 4 years ago. Like, I know a lot of them on the team now weren't there, and they weren't there in 2019 or anything. But, a lot of those guys, they've been beaten down by New Orleans time and time again, and they've heard it. Now they finally got over that hump of finally beating New Orleans in the regular season. They can move on to a team where the Packers are in a very similar situation that the Bucs were versus the Saints. The Packers are going to be hearing how, just like you mentioned, the Bucs played them twice in 2020. Once was a regular season game, but one was a big one, and the Bucs beat them both times. So the Packers are going to be hearing that, and they're going to want to be exercising their demons as well, just like the Bucs did against the Saints. So I would expect a solid effort from the Packers as well, and we'll see who comes out on top of this football game.
So opening things up on the game preview show, as we always do, let's take a glimpse over at the injury report for Tampa Bay. We talk a lot about this early stretch of the season, but health is a factor because obviously on the offensive side of the ball, you're not as healthy as you would like to be. And then on top of that, Mike Evans is going to be missing this game because his suspension from week 2 was upheld. So he will miss this game. They'll be without their wide receiver 1. And to be honest with you, I know this is kind of foreshadowing a little bit, but I still think the Bucs are the better team, regardless of the guys they have missing on offense. But let's talk about some other guys who may or may not be question marks for this week's matchup. So Julio Jones is at the start of the list, and Todd Bowles actually just said today that he is going to be another game time decision for yet another week in a row. Rough start for Julio, but I mean, Sean King kind of brought it up with us earlier this week. It's almost hard to be too upset because you want him playing his best football down the stretch. And if that means a little more rest than we're comfortable with to start the year against quality opponents, maybe the offense suffers a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, without Julio Jones out there in week 2, and even with him out there in week 1, this defense has done enough for this offense to still kind of be in a figure it out period is a weird way to put it. But Julio Jones, his status kind of up in the air for Sunday, which isn't ideal.
No, it's not. It's not ideal, but he was close to playing last Sunday, I think. So with another week of rest, you hope that he can go. We don't know. We don't have any indication, obviously. But you are hoping. He didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday. He is off on Wednesdays, so that's not a huge deal. But not practicing on Thursday wasn't great. And I don't believe he practiced today. However, he was working with the trainers, doing some light jogging and stuff on the practice field on Friday. So at least he was doing something. I think it'll be a close call. And we'll see how it all turns out. I don't think this is going to be something that holds him out long term. Whenever you're a game time decision, it must, the injury is probably not serious. So I don't think it's going to be something that holds him out a long time, but you could see maybe one more week without Julio. We'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting to see whether he can go or not. And we have no idea. We can't predict it. It all depends on how he feels going through warm-ups.
Well, and a common theme throughout the first quarter of the season, we've talked about it plenty on the show, but the Buccaneers coaching staff is starting to mention it as well. Guys like Julio Jones, guys like Mike Evans, Levante David, Tom Brady even, are getting designated days off during the week. So the fact that they are proving to be a little more conservative with wanting to push these guys out there and get the most out of them right now, like, the fact of the matter is some of these guys are a little bit older. It's really, really hard to play at your peak ability at 31, 32 years old in the NFL, especially at a position like wide receiver. So the more rest you can give these guys, as long as they're feeling good, I just want to trust that the staff knows best. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and the good thing, the only silver lining I think in the Mike Evans suspension is now he gets to rest his own injury. He was dealing with a calf injury, so now he doesn't have to worry. He doesn't have to worry about playing this week or practicing. He can take it easy this week, and hopefully that calf can be 100% healed up next week. So, or at least maybe not 100%, but feeling much better than it was last week. I believe he had it taped up at practice, and then he kind of hurt himself a little bit during the New Orleans game. But yeah, I agree. I think the Bucs saw how last season went, and with specifically with the wide receiver position, and they also, we haven't talked about it, but they made an addition with Cole Beasley joining the team, so they want as much depth as possible. But the depth doesn't matter if none of it's healthy. So I think that's their top priority. Obviously, they want to win football games in the regular season because that's the goal, right? But they want to be as healthy as possible come the postseason. So if not having Julio Jones week 3 versus Green Bay means you might be able to have him week 15 when you might need a must-win game to getting yourself in the position for a number 1 seed potentially, I think the Bucs would rather that. So you'd like to see Julio out there. I think the Bucs want to see Julio out there, but I also don't think they're going to push him. They know that He's a player who is a veteran who has had multiple injuries over the last few years. He has not played a lot of football, and that seems to be the issue with him. He has the talent, he has the ability. It's just the health, and right now, I think that's what the Bucs are trying to manage.
And it's no secret that injuries were the downfall of the Buccaneers last year. Everybody looks at that divisional round playoff game against the Rams and like, yeah, they almost won, but they didn't. And I think the reason that game was at one point, 27-0?
27-3, I think.
Right. The reason that deficit was as big as it was is because there was no offensive firepower whatsoever for Tampa Bay. I mean, Tom Brady had to will them back into that game with a couple of, big turnovers by the defense as well throughout the process. But when you're missing your right tackle, when you're missing offensive linemen, when you're missing playmakers in the wide receiver room, the Buccaneers are learning from their mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to hold injuries against the team because it's usually worst case scenario. You can never guess stuff like that to happen, but the Bucs are going to do what they can to take these preventative measures to prevent these guys from being out in the long term. Another guy in the wide receiver room this week who popped up, who's considered a question mark, but I thought it was common knowledge he isn't going to play, is Chris Godwin. I don't think there's a chance he plays this week. People say he's a question mark, but there's no way he was going to play this week.
Yeah, I really think the Bucs. I urge the Bucs to not. I don't think he's going to play, but I urge the Bucs to not rush him because of this Mike Evans suspension. That's not smart. That's if you're going to rush him back, that is not smart. Now, I do think Chris Godwin's close, and the reason I think he's close is because they did not put him on IR when they could have. If they put him on IR, that would have meant he missed the first 4 games. He missed 4 games. So that would have meant the Saints, the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Falcons. So that means that the Bucs thinks he's either returning versus the Packers, the Chiefs, or the Falcons. They think he's going to play in one of those games, or else they would have put him on IR. So I would not expect him to play. I don't think the Bucs are going to rush him back just because of this Mike Evans suspension. I still think next week versus Kansas City is a realistic shot. But for this week, I do not expect to see Chris Godwin out there.
Along the offensive line, the left tackle Donovan Smith also considered a question mark, but some positive news for Bucs fans. He returned to practice this week. Did not practice today. Todd Bowles addressed that and said, listen, they're just going to give him some rest. They feel like he needs it. And I mean, when you're coming off of an injury and you go out there and practice, maybe you've earned a day off on a Friday. But me personally, we don't have a definitive answer as of this recording, but I think we do see 76 give it a go this week.
Well, you thought that last week too.
Yeah, so. Well,
but Todd Bowles said that there's no setbacks for Donovan Smith, and he's another game time decision. So I don't think the Bucs are not going to be ruling him out until probably a little bit before the game when you get the inactives list, if at all. It was a positive last week. This week feels realistic, and this week I will say your claim that Smith will play feels a little bit more realistic because last week he didn't even practice at all. Like last week he didn't practice at all. It was a pain tolerance thing.
Yeah, and it's tough to do that.
Yeah, so last week I was like, I really wouldn't expect him. This week I still don't expect him to play. I think again next week is the most realistic, but it wouldn't shock me. Last week would have probably really shocked me if he played. This week with him practicing and having no setbacks after that practice, it wouldn't shock me if he gave it a go.
We had mentioned the ER. We had mentioned the IR. Yeah.
Well, the ER is where a lot of these guys might end up.
We had mentioned the IR a little bit earlier, and just some additions for Tampa Bay this week. Running back Gio Bernard and backup left tackle Josh Wells is on there.
Josh Wells, basically once Donovan Smith went down, Brandon Walton obviously came in. So that's important because if Donovan Smith can't go, Brandon Walton is your starting left tackle again. I mean, he filled in good, but just like Sean King said on the Monday show, and I've said it a bunch, backup players are good when they're in that role. I always talked about a backup baseball player. Everybody thinks that the utility guy on their team is so good. Sure, when you give him 300 at-bats, he's good, but what happens when you give him 500 at-bats? That average is going to go from 290 down to 230.
Longevity is where some of these young guys get exposed, especially with a lack of experience.
Yeah, and depth is depth, but long term, that can't really. Most of the time, it doesn't really hold up. So hopefully, if Donovan Smith doesn't play and Brandon Walton has to fill in, hopefully he is able to put together another solid week. He played really well in a tough situation, getting thrust into there in New Orleans. He played really well. Hopefully he can play really well again against another pretty talented defensive line.
Another potential blocker for Tampa Bay, probably not going to play this Sunday. That's rookie tight end number 88, Cade Otton. He hasn't practiced all week due to personal reasons. We don't know what it is. It's none of our business. But if he doesn't play, a lot of people might be scratching their heads as well. But this could be the debut of Kyle Rudolph, huh? I mean, it feels like it's about time.
They need it. They are getting absolutely nothing from the tight end position. I mean, absolutely nothing. And this is in terms of receiving and stuff. Blocking, Brady obviously hasn't been the best blocker, but I'm not going to hold that against him because that's never been Brady's calling card. Keith has been good as a blocker. He was not as good versus New Orleans as he was versus Dallas. Cade Otton didn't see as much action with blocking as he did versus Dallas. But, I mean, Cameron Brate had 1 catch for 7 yards in the Dallas game. And then versus New Orleans, he had 1 catch for 9 yards. Cade Otton had a catch in New Orleans, 1 catch for 4 yards. And then in the Dallas game, I don't believe he had anything.
I think he was targeted one time.
The tight ends so far this season have 3 catches. Like, they are getting absolutely nothing from this tight end room. And I've criticized this offense the last 2 weeks, despite them being 2-0. I've criticized the offense and the philosophy, but part of it is that they're just not getting production from an entire position group in the receiving room. I mean, they are literally getting nothing. So maybe Rudolph playing against a team that he knows very well in Green Bay, he can come in and maybe provide a little bit of a spark. I don't know what to do. It seems like, you better hope that Gronkowski comes out of retirement because I'm not expecting Kyle Rudolph to solve all the answers. He was scratched, like a healthy scratch. There's a reason for that. So I'm not expecting him to come in and be a superstar. But something's got to be better. And I don't know, like I said, if Rob Gronkowski doesn't return, I don't know if you can go a full 17 games and an entire playoff run with the tight end position just being a complete non-factor, especially with the injuries you have at receiver.
And it's tough, too, because people look at this Buccaneers offense the last 2 years with Tom Brady under center. The tight end position, with Rob Gronkowski playing, obviously, has been a safety net for this offense. It's one of those things where, like, outside of the tight end position, just the sheer chemistry that Brady and Gronk had to make any adjustment at all at any time. I mean, he could literally look over and with a wink of his eye, Rob would probably know what he meant. He'd go out there and he'd execute, and the Bucs would probably move the chains, get a touchdown, whatever they needed to do, whatever the situation called for. It's a big change. Like, I know that a lot of people are also going to say that, oh, well, with a Bruce Arians vertical style offense, it doesn't call for a lot of help from the tight end, but it doesn't matter.
Look at what Rob Gronkowski did in 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, I have said in the past that, like, in a Bruce Arians offense, the tight end doesn't matter. But when the tight end is a guy like Rob Gronkowski, he makes it matter.
Right. When it's a first ballot Hall of Famer throwing to a first ballot Hall of Famer, he's going to be productive regardless of what your playbook is asking for.
And they're missing that right now. If Gronkowski was on the football team right now, I think there'd be a lot less concerns on Sunday because of the receivers being out. Okay, you would have Russell Gage, maybe Julio Jones, Brashad Perryman, but then you'd also have Rob Gronkowski as that safety blanket. And right now it's just not there. Cameron Brate's getting older. He was never the most athletic guy to begin with. It seems like he's slowing down. I like him as a person, but right now he's not giving you enough as a football player. So, it's unfortunate because, like I said, Cameron Brate has been a great player for the Bucs for many years, but right now it's just he's being exposed right now, and they need to find a way to get some type of production out of their tight end room.
Wrapping up the injury report for Tampa Bay, defensive lineman Akeem Hicks is out this week after leaving last week's game due to injury. But everybody else in the injury report should play. I think is expected to play. There were a lot of names on there, but not everybody that we need to focus on. I will say one interesting note I took from practice this week. Everybody talks week in and week out about all these narratives with Tom Brady and Tampa Bay. Oh, he doesn't like it down there. Oh, he runs the team. He doesn't respect his coach. Whatever it may be, whatever shit people feel like throwing against the wall. It was reported, I think on Tuesday, that from now until the end of the season, Tom Brady is pretty much always going to have Wednesdays off. Well, guess who showed up to practice on Wednesday and participated fully? None other than TB12. I think Julio Jones may have also been out there, but he's another guy who had a designated.
Julio didn't practice on Wednesday.
Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is Tom was out there a day after everyone reported that he wouldn't be out there. So like that, personally, that warmed my heart that, he chose to go do that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect it every week. But like last year, he had Wednesdays off sometimes, so like that's not a huge deal. Todd Bowles also said that Cole Beasley could go on Sunday if the Bucs need him to do so. That to me sounds like if Julio Jones doesn't go, it sounds like Cole Beasley could. Also Scotty Miller showed up on the injury report, so he was dealing with something this week as well. Like you said, most of the other players are expected to be good. Like, all the other guys. Carlton Davis was on the injury report. He's fine. Leonard Fournette, again, was on the injury report. He's fine. But about the Akeem Hicks thing, really quick note. He'll be out about a month. We know it's been reported. But they're going to miss him, I think. It seemed like he had a slow start versus Dallas, but he was pretty good versus New Orleans. And I think they're going to miss him, especially against the team like the Kansas City Chiefs, where pressure is going to be key. And even in this game, pressure is going to be key. So I think they are going to miss him. If he is out like strictly a month, basically, he's likely to miss, obviously, the Packers, Chiefs, Falcons, Steelers, probably the Panthers game week 7, and maybe you could be looking at a week 8 return against the Ravens. So I would guess he's probably going to be out the next 4 or 5 games. So that's going to hurt. And probably Logan Hall is probably going to be playing a bit more than normal. So it'll be nice to see him, but I think it's going to hurt the defensive line overall because Hicks, to me, was just starting to get going a little bit there.
Let's talk about the addition of Cole Beasley. We forgot to mention that. Put out a video over on our YouTube channel this week, but let's get a little more into that. Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed former Bills and Cowboys receiver Cole Beasley to their practice squad. The expectation is that sooner rather than later, he's going to be bumped up to the active roster, and maybe this week is the week if Julio Jones does not give it a go. But I think the idea behind this is people look at Cole Beasley and say like, oh, well, he's washed. He's another old veteran receiver. And maybe to a degree he is, but I think we should also remember that his last 2 seasons were some of his most productive. And I mean, at the end of the day, he's just another safety blanket type player for this offense, another veteran wide receiver that Brady can build trust with a little bit faster than some of the younger guys. And he's going to give you a lot more of that underneath stuff. He's not a deep threat like Scotty Miller is, like a lot of people seem to think he is. That's not how he works. He's more of an Edelman receiver than we've had in a while.
Yeah, he's Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Scotty Miller is not. Cole Beasley is definitely Julian Edelman.
Cole Beasley's here because Julian Edelman told Brady again, hey, I'm not coming out of retirement. We don't know that for sure. That's just speculation, obviously. But
people forget Edelman's 3 years older than Cole Beasley.
36?
So, yeah, Edelman's old.
Busted knees.
Yeah, like I think Edelman I think even if Brady asked him, I think Edelman would say no. But yeah, Beasley has been productive the last 2 years. Now his production went down from 2020 to 2021. He had almost 1,000 yards for the first time in his career in 2020. He was fantastic in 2020. He had 967 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. In 2021, it dipped to 693 and 1 receiving touchdown. But you're just looking for depth in anywhere you can find it. To me, this feels a lot like when the Bucs signed John Brown last year. I don't know how much Cole Beasley is going to be playing for the Bucs.
I don't think John Brown even registered a catch in a Bucs uniform, if I remember.
I think he might have registered 1. I think it might have been in that Carolina season finale. He might have registered 1. But yeah, I don't know how much he's going to play. We'll see. But it's depth. It's depth that you can have. And it's clear that, they don't have a lot of trust in a guy like Scotty Miller right now, or a Kalen Geiger, or Devin Tompkins. They don't have a lot of trust in those guys. And when you're trying to go all in to win this year, you don't put a lot of trust in those young guys. If they're not doing the job, you can't. You have to put your trust in veterans, unfortunately. Of course, the Bucs would love to see Scotty Miller rise to the occasion. Of course. They're not rooting against Scotty Miller.
Well, Scotty had a fair shake last week to do that.
And he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they've tried, and just it seems like he's running too fast for his own good. We talked about that. So Beasley's here now to just provide some depth. And like I said, I don't know how many games when the Bucs are fully healthy, will Beasley even be like on the roster? I don't know. If Julio's 100%, Mike Evans back from suspension 100%, Chris Godwin's 100%. Like I don't know if Beasley will even be. So he can stay on the practice squad right now. And he can be elevated to the active roster 3 times from the practice squad before the Bucs have to make a decision on either keeping him on the practice squad and he cannot be elevated anymore, or you got to have him on the active roster. So that at least gives you the Packers game, the Chiefs game, and the Falcons game that they can basically determine whether or not Cole Beasley can just stay on the practice squad and come up for game days. So, it's fine depth. It is what it is, and hopefully he'll be able to provide something that Scotty Miller or a Kalen Geiger or Jalen Darden just cannot.
So that does it for the Bucs injury report. We should briefly mention the situation that Green Bay finds themselves in. People talk a lot about, finding trust in young wide receivers, and Aaron Rodgers and no stranger to that this year, but there's a lot of guys hurt for Green Bay this week.
So yeah, this is like pretty unprecedented. Now we don't have Fridays. That's a big distinction. And people that are listening to this, whether it's Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, for a Sunday morning, they're going to be saying, "You idiots." Of course, this guy's
you
playing.
idiots. All these guys played.
Yeah. But with the information that we currently have, Randall Cobb did not participate on Wednesday or Thursday with an illness. Seems like a pretty serious illness if you're not going to participate in practice to me. But then, so they had Al Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Christian Watson have all been banged up, but they were all limited on Wednesday. None of those guys practiced on Thursday. So let's say that out of the Bucs receive, let's say Julio Jones and Chris Godwin do not play. Okay, let's say those 2 don't play. Then let's say the Packers let's say Randall Cobb, let's say he's just sick. Let's say Randall Cobb plays. They're going to be without Al Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Christian Watson. So what's it going to be? Is it going to be Randall Cobb and Romeo Dubes against Russell Gage and Brashad Perryman? Like, it's just that's going to be insane.
It's the battle of the Bay, but it's also the battle of the reserve wide receivers. Yeah. You might see some new faces everywhere this week.
Yeah, it's yeah. Now, I mean, a major thing for the Packers is David Bakhtiari didn't participate on Wednesday, but was limited on Thursday, and he's one of the best tackles in the game when on the field. He had obviously a real struggle staying on the field, but when he's there, he's really good. So I don't know if he could play. I think he hasn't played yet this season, but hopefully for the Bucs' sake, he doesn't play. But other than that, I mean, Elgton Jenkins was limited participation both days, Wednesday and Thursday. He's a good player. Their offensive line didn't play great against Minnesota, played a little bit better against Chicago, but with Jenkins in the lineup. So, the Packers could be looking at a very similar situation to the Bucs in that Aaron Rodgers does not have a ton of weapons to throw to.
All right, let's get down to business here. Let's break this game down. I want to talk about the defense for Tampa Bay first because you got to stick with the hot hand, right? I mean, these guys have won us the game the first 2 weeks of the season, and they look to do just that against Aaron Rodgers, who usually does not play well in Florida and also usually does not play well against this Tampa Bay defense of Todd Bowles. They are looking for takeaways on Sunday. But I'm going to be honest with you. We talk a lot about the strengths and the weaknesses so far of this Buccaneers defense. And over the past few seasons, they have touted the #1 run defense in the league. I do think that changes a little bit this year, just with a change in approach, I guess, and how they run their defense and what assignments they send guys on. But I think they can do a lot to disrupt Aaron Rodgers. We talked about the pass rush looking a little bit better to this point in the season. So I think it's going to be a tough day for Aaron Rodgers. But as far as Tampa Bay goes, I think they could get beat up by that running back committee they have in Green Bay. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, they've been getting the job done. They've also got the third back whose name is escaping me right now, but he was also productive on primetime against Chicago not that long ago. So realistically, if there's an area where I feel like this game could kind of get away from the Bucs, it's going to kind of determine what those guys do and what their afternoon looks like.
I'm concerned. I am concerned because the Packers look really good running the football. Their offensive line has been blocking pretty well. The Packers are kind of playing the same way that the Bucs are. They don't want Aaron Rodgers throwing it 40, 45 times. That they're trying to run it more. And now the Minnesota game kind of got away from them, right? It kind of got away from them. So you had to go away from the run a little bit. But Aaron Jones had 5 attempts for 49 yards, 9.8 average. A.J. Dillon, 10 attempts for 45 yards, 4.5 average. That's and a touchdown. In Chicago, Aaron Jones was a monster. 15 attempts for 132 yards. That's 8.8 average and a touchdown. A.J. Dillon, 18 attempts for 61 yards, 3.4 average. Their running game has been really good. And I think with the lack of receiver talent that they're going to have on Sunday or could have on Sunday, they're going to be relying on that run game and also to keep Brady off the field. Aaron Rodgers has had trouble with turnovers in Tampa and pressure in Tampa and in Florida in general. How do you eliminate that? You run the football and you run it efficiently and effectively. And right now, this Bucs run defense has not been as great. It really hasn't. And part of it is because of the standard they've set for themselves. I think if they were, always like a middle of the pack run defense team, we'd be like, okay, like whatever. But the standard that they've set, the standard that they've set for themselves is so high and the bar is so high. Right now, they're not living up to that, and they need to be better, or else they could be in danger of the Packers just controlling the clock and grinding out a low-scoring victory because Tom Brady can't get the football, and the Bucs can't get their hands on the football to turn the ball over. So I am concerned about that, and I think how the Bucs handle the Packers' ground game is going to be a big determining factor in who wins.
Yeah, and changes in personnel are always going to play a factor into that. Former defensive end, JPP, signed a 1-year deal with Baltimore this week, so we're going to see him later on this year if he's on their active roster. And then, of course, Ndamukong Suh, still a free agent, but, I mean, those two guys, even though JPP wasn't healthy most of the time, he still played a vital role in shutting down the edge and helping that run game be what it was the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something really fast, and I'm not overly concerned right now, but I don't know what's going on with Vita Vea. He's being doubled a little bit more, but at the same time, like, he had a sack really late in the game in Dallas. Other than that, the dude's been invisible. Like he has been invisible. And when you're talking about stopping the run game, he is the guy that is responsible for stopping that run game, and he hasn't done it.
Especially with Akeem Hicks not being in there now. I know I made the comment that after Akeem Hicks left the game against New Orleans, it almost seemed like that run defense got a little bit better. So maybe we see some more Logan Hall. Of course, Will Golston getting involved there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they roll with this Sunday. But in 2 games against Tampa Bay in 2020, Aaron Jones only ran for like 42 yards.
And that's because the Bucs were able to control the game.
Yeah.
That's huge. The Packers were able to control the game. It all depends on what team gets to play their style of football. That's what it depends on. What team gets to play how they want to play? The other team that doesn't get to play that way is going to lose. Like that's simple. If the Bucs want to control the clock, the Packers want to control the clock. Whoever can do that is going to win the game.
Well, while we are talking about the strengths and weaknesses of this Bucs defense and playing football their way, something that they have done incredibly well these first 2 games is get after the quarterback. They currently lead the NFL in sacks. I think they're at 13.
I thought they were at 10.
Maybe they are at 10. That sounds a little more accurate to me.
They've only allowed 13 points.
That's what it is. Okay. Well, this Bucs defense obviously leading the league in a lot of categories, including points scored, only 13 up until this point. But, this pass rush has been very much improved when we look at how they started 2020, 2021, especially 2021, when all of that hype was there, right? Shaq Barrett leads the NFL in quarterback pressures. I know he doesn't lead the NFL in sacks right now, but Devin White also has 3 sacks on the year. This pass rush is showing up, and David Bakhtiari, his status is going to be a huge question mark as to how productive they are, but I kind of expect that to continue this week. Like, I know that whoever plays their brand of football is probably going to win the game, but I still think this Bucs defense can do some damage regardless of what the running game looks like. If they can control the clock and Aaron Rodgers only passes the ball 20 times this game, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But on those passing downs, if you can take advantage and get after them, I mean, that's how you beat any NFL quarterback is you pressure them, and they certainly have been able to do that with Rodgers in years past.
Yeah, and Rodgers struggles against Tampa, you know, particularly in Tampa, have been well documented. Greg Allman brought up an old tweet that he had, I believe, before the first Bucs-Packers game in 2020. Said, amazing that Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers has never thrown more than 3 interceptions in a game. Stranger still, he has 2 3-interception games in his 4 games in Tampa, 2008 and 2009, and 2 3-interception games in his 200 career games played everywhere else. Now, he also updated the stat, said, just to update this still crazy stat, Aaron Rodgers has never thrown more than 3 interceptions in a game, and he has as many 3-interception games in Tampa, 2 in 4 games there, as he does in 233 career games played anywhere else. So now it's just getting more and more. He seems to really, really struggle in Tampa. Rodgers' 2020 game in a 38-10 loss to the Bucs in Tampa, he was 16 for 35 for 160 yards and 2 interceptions. It's the 3rd worst game of his career by quarterback rating. 3 of his 6 lowest rated starts ever have come in Tampa, others in 2008 and 2009. So this is a guy who's really, really struggled in Tampa and the state of Florida, because he played in last year's game versus the Saints in Jacksonville and lost. He was 15 for 28 or 133 yards and 2 interceptions. He, has really, really struggled in the state of Florida. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something with the humidity or something that he doesn't like about something, but he really seems to struggle with that. And certain guys have that, but Rodgers is one of the most high-profile players I think I have seen that really, really struggles. So he doesn't throw many interceptions, but against the Bucs, he seems to. And the Bucs, I think, are going to have to force at least 1 or 2 on Sunday.
Percocets and Florida Heat don't mix. That.
Well, I mean, if he's still on them or not, we don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I love making fun of Aaron Rodgers any chance I can get. The guy is entertaining, and a lot of people say he's, the most athletic of all time, but...
Athletic?
Yeah, I know. Well, you can't say he's the greatest because people get all bent out of shape because obviously there is only one GOAT in the NFL as of right now.
Yeah, but most athletic?
Yeah, listen, that's just what I've heard. Okay, the comparison was always... Brady's the greatest.
Aaron Rodgers is athletic. I think I've heard Brady's the greatest. Rodgers is the best. That's what I've heard.
Sure, yeah.
Not. I didn't heard most athletic. There's some. I mean, Rodgers as an athlete's a good athlete.
Yeah, but when you got Josh Allen's and Pat Mahomes running around, it's hard to make the case. I mean, this was also 3-4 years ago before those guys were really prominent.
I would even say in terms of athlete and athletic, Michael Vick was more athletic.
Yeah, there you go. Cam
Rodgers.
Newton in his prime.
Yeah,
guys like that. That's what I think of. Not necessarily Aaron Rodgers. Oh, that's good stuff, though, man. But hey, as we kind of wrap up the discussion on the Tampa Bay defense, there is one guy that we should highlight, and I feel like it's going to kind of live and die on defense, depending on what his position group does. And I know we've talked about this guy week in and week out at this point, but you almost have to expect another big game from Devin White here if this Bucs defense is going to neutralize Green Bay the way that they hope to, especially with the running backs.
Yeah, I think the linebackers are going to play a pretty key role. Levante David, I believe, had a sack in Tampa against Aaron Rodgers. So did Devin White. They're going to play a pretty key role inside this game, like you said, against with that running game as well. They're going to have to play well. I think that the 2 linebackers are definitely going to have to play well, and we'll see what happens, but it's not going to be easy. I think even though Rodgers is going to be without some weapons and he's trying to work in new weapons, this is the best quarterback you're going to be facing so far. Like a good quarterback, we've seen it with Brady, like an elite quarterback
they're still going to make plays.
Yeah, can make the lack of weapons not matter. So, like Dak Prescott to me is a good quarterback, but he struggled on Sunday Night Football. Jameis Winston to me is a decent quarterback, but he struggled. To me, Aaron Rodgers is better than both those guys. So, like you're gonna be facing the back-to-back MVP, whether you like it or not. He was the back-to-back MVP, and he didn't just get there just for no reason. So, you're going to be facing an elite quarterback, and when you face elite quarterbacks, sometimes you can play great defense and it doesn't matter. So the Bucs are definitely going to have to get after Rodgers, and they're going to have to make the Packers one-dimensional, which this season, so far, the Packers offense is easier said than done because they've been running the ball really well.
So we're about 7 months removed from the NFL superlatives, but can we agree that 2021 Brady was robbed?
Yeah, we already talked about this.
I know, but I just want to revisit the topic for anyone who may have forgotten. I know we praise this guy as the back-to-back MVP, but I want to put an asterisk on that 2021 season.
Sure, but I'm not. It's facts. Like
No,
it
is.
happens.
It is. I mean, the evidence is there. Statistics, facts are facts. But I still think Brady was robbed. Anyways, let's talk about the other side of the football for Tampa Bay, the offense, who usually we open up the show with because there is much more to talk about, but I think the million-dollar question this week is, with a question mark on Julio Jones, regardless of if he's out there or not, is this week the week that the offense finally figures it out and gives us a little bit more?
No.
No.
That doesn't, and that, well, I mean, they're going to be without Mike Evans. Like, we know that. I mean, and that's just the reality. I mean, they could legit be without Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and Chris Godwin. That's,
Here we are in week 3, just like we guessed.
We don't know about Donovan Smith. The Packers, while Justin Jefferson went wild on the Packers, like, I mean, Kirk Cousins was 23 of 32, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. The Vikings only scored 23 points. And then the Bears scored 10 points. And I know the Vikings and Bears, I think the Bucs offense is probably better than those, especially the Bears, obviously. But the Vikings and Bucs is pretty close, I think, especially with the Bucs that we've seen so far. But the Packers defense, I think it's a combination. It's a combination of the Bucs missing pieces, but also the Packers defense being really good. Like, I think the Packers defense has come as advertised so far. Rasul Douglas is getting better and better at that nickel corner. Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in the NFL.
Had just a freak interception against Chicago. I don't know if you saw that one to kind of wrap things up. He's always been good.
Yeah, he's really good. And they have a talented defensive line. Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, those guys. Their linebackers have improved, so they're a good defense, and they haven't really had much trouble this season. So it's the Bucs are going to try to run the ball, and that's where the Packers may be able to be exploited, because the Bears ran for 15 times with David Montgomery for 122 yards. So if the Bucs can run the football, that's fine. But if they can't, if they have to go in, if it's like New Orleans last week where the Packers are stuffing the run and the Bucs have to rely on the pass, I start to worry, because the Packers secondary, I think, is their strong suit of the defense. And I don't know about the Bucs' lack of experience and just necessarily talent at wide receiver. I don't know if they would have enough to be able to overcome some of the Packers, defensive things that they're going to throw at them.
I think a lot of people hope this is the week we can finally see the emergence of a Russell Gage. I mean, even more so if Julio Jones is not available out there, because if he is, you have to assume he's going to be your number one to a degree. But
yeah, Russell Gage could very well be the one.
he's got to show up. I mean, sooner or later. I know we're in the first quarter of the season, so we're probably overreacting a little bit, but we cannot stress this enough. You pay this guy $10 million a year to essentially be your wide receiver 3. And I know the first 2 weeks has kind of been a slog on the offensive side of the ball, but you got to start seeing something from this guy eventually.
Yes and no. I mean, he led the team in catches last week.
Fair.
Hasn't had the big plays. Had 5 catches for 28 yards. Also was second on the team in targets with 6. Was wide open on the Rashad Perryman touchdown. Brady just didn't decide to go there. Sometimes that happens, and that's only really some stuff that you can watch when you're looking at the film, honestly, is, the guy's open, the quarterback decided to go somewhere else. So I think Gage has been fine. You want more out of him. I don't know if he's still limited by that hamstring at all. But yeah, I mean, you're going to need more out of him because, like you said, you pay him $10 million. So you're going to need more out of him. But I also don't think he is completely sucked. It's just, this is the type of game where, you're going to need a 5-6 catch for 70-yard and a touchdown performance. Like, you might need that from Russell Gage. You're not expecting Russell Gage to go out there and dominate. That's not what you paid him to do. That's not what he is. And sort of be that guy, like I said, 5-6 catches, 60, 70 yards, and a score, make an impact on the game. And Gage made a small impact on the Saints game, but it's time for him to make a bigger impact on this one. He's going to have to.
I think when you're used to having guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans who can make a play at any given moment, it's easier to look at someone in this position and say, yeah, we expect a lot more from him. But I think the fact of the matter is, kind of like you said, he doesn't have to dominate the game. I'm not expecting him to go out there and get 120 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, but be that guy on the offensive side of the ball who steps up and helps make the play, right? Like Rashad Perryman was last week. That was the go ahead, essentially the game winning touchdown for Tampa Bay.
That was technically the game winner.
Right. When they finally just bust open the door and they can get over the hill on the offensive side of the ball, I'd like to see Russell Gage be that guy this week because we know he can do it.
Yeah. I mean, we know he can do it in a Falcons uniform.
Yeah, that's fair.
You don't know if he can do it in a Buccaneers uniform, and that's what he needs to prove on Sunday.
Now, looking at the battle of the trenches before we move on here, I think a lot of eyes are, well, actually, I don't think as many eyes are going to be on the offensive line this week because Brady hasn't been sacked as many times as the national media would like. So there hasn't been as much slander on this offensive line. A lot of people consider them incredibly untrustworthy, but I mean, it's one of those things, man. And until they royally F things up, I'd like to see another week of consistency. And for guys like Robert Hainsey, Luke Gedeke, that can only mean great things so far.
Yeah, I believe Brady was sacked once against New Orleans.
And it was like stepping up, kind of fell down.
Yeah, that's a defensive line that has given him hell. So that's a really positive sign. Now, again, like I noted, you're going up against a really talented Packers front. And there, Preston Smith is a good player. Kenny Clark's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Rashawn Gary's a good player. So you're going to have to contain them. This isn't going to get any easier, right? I mean, this is not going to get any easier from New Orleans to Green Bay. But, yeah, you're starting to see the confidence in the offensive line a bit more. And hopefully they can put together another good game. I think the offensive line being kind of in flux and having some pieces move around, I think that is part of the reason why the offensive game plans have been what they are. So hopefully if the team can get a little bit more confidence in that offensive line that they're going to be able to do the job, they can open up the playbook a little bit more and get back to what I think they need to get back to, which is playing to their strengths of, passing the football, utilizing play action, running it, sure. But, I think the reluctance to pass is because they don't want Brady taking all these hits. And he really didn't take many hits in New Orleans. Dallas, he got beat up a little bit, but he really didn't take that many hits versus the Saints. And I think they're looking for another week similar to that. Hopefully they get it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Let me ask you this. Before we move on to the weekly checklist, is there anybody in particular on this offense that you want to highlight this week or maybe you're going to be watching a little bit closer?
Well, I mean, maybe a guy like Rachaad White with the receivers being limited potentially. Do you see Rachaad White as a receiving threat a bit more? We haven't really seen that a lot this year yet. And I thought that Giovanni Bernard was actually going to start out as the third down running back, and I was wrong. Giovanni Bernard has been playing mostly on special teams.
He played. He had one return, and now he's on IR. As far as I know,
I think he played 4 special team snaps on Sunday, and he got hurt. That's just bad luck right there.
Rough start for Gio. This is a guy who's kind of gotten used to being injured these last 2 seasons.
Yeah, but I mean, Rachaad White, I expected him to kind of be like a late. I said by like mid-season, I thought he was going to be in form, but right now this week might call for a bit more. Maybe you have Leonard Fournette in the backfield here with Rachaad White, lined out wide. Maybe you use his receiving ability a bit more. Now, he did have a drop against the Saints. That's going to need to be cleaned up, especially when the Bucs drafted you because you were such a good pass catcher. You need to catch those balls, or else Brady's just not going to throw the ball to you because he's not going to trust you. So I'm not expecting a huge game from Rachaad White, but it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a bit more from him with the limited options they have at receiver.
Yeah, I think the process of getting that guy just casually more reps throughout the year, a couple targets here and there early in the first quarter of the season, and then as the year goes on, especially with injury going to be lingering at the running back position with the absence of Gio Bernard the rest of the year, maybe you see him step up in some capacity here over the next few weeks. But, I mean, it's good. I think anytime you can get a rookie out there, I know we talk about this championship window, and you don't have a lot of time to waste with rookies, so could it be seen as a risk relying on this guy? Absolutely. But the more rookies you have who can come in here and contribute, it's going to obviously fare better for this draft class and the Buccaneers in the long term. So hopefully we get to see him make a few plays this week. That would be definitely exciting. But as we bring this game preview to a close, as we do every single week, we finish things up with our favorite segment. It is the weekly checklist. Basically what it is basically at least 3 things the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to do if they want to emerge victorious against Green Bay this Sunday. Evan, I'm going to toss it over to you. What have you got, my friend?
Well, the first thing is win the turnover battle. I know I said that last week, and I said that if you won the turnover battle versus the Saints, you'd win the game. I still kind of feel that way in this game. They during the first game in Tampa versus these two teams, the Bucs won the turnover battle and they won the game, right? And Jamel Dean's pick 6 probably saved that game. I think the Bucs lose that game if Jamel Dean doesn't make that play. But I mean, it changed the whole game. The Bucs 2 turnovers right there changed the entire game. So you need to win the turnover battle. You need to play clean football. Did a better job of it versus New Orleans, but the fumbles, like the snaps, like that's something to me that's always inexcusable. You should have no problem getting the ball from the center to the quarterback.
It's fundamentals.
Yeah,
you know
that
what I mean?
It's second nature.
It's less of a mistake. Like if you've got a guy who caught the ball and he's running an open field and drops it, that's one thing. It's a mistake. But if you're botching the snap, like, yeah, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, and that's on the center and the quarterback. So, Hainsey and Brady will have to clean that up. So I think, you're going to need to force a turnover or 2 out of this Packers offense. And Rodgers doesn't throw many picks, but he throws some against Tampa for some reason. Todd Bowles does a really good job of disguising things. So I think the Bucs are going to have to find a way to force 1 or 2 turnovers and take advantage of those turnovers. Second is red zone. You got to be more productive in the red zone. You took 2 trips down there to start the game versus the Saints. One was the fumble. The second one, you got stopped on a 4th and 1. Brady talked about that at his press conference yesterday, said, that 2 opportunities right there to score points. He didn't do it because of, whatever, mental errors, mental mistakes, poor execution. You need to be better in the red zone. You need to start turning these from 3 to 6. And I mean, even, versus New Orleans, they had 2 chances at 3 right there and couldn't even do it. So you need to not waste your red zone opportunities in this game. And secondly, third, is just stay disciplined again. They did a pretty good job versus New Orleans, but you don't want flags deciding this game. So stay disciplined. And that also not only means with flags and penalties, but also means on the field play too. Stay disciplined with the run game on the defensive side of the ball, because I think the Packers are gonna try and establish it. I really do think so. The Bucs are gonna have to be able to be patient. They're gonna have to fill in their gaps, and I think they're gonna have to defend this run well, because if they don't, the Packers are gonna control this game.
And I don't think, just because of the offensive firepower for both teams, I don't think this game is ever going to get to the point where it's so out of hand to where the run game can't keep you in it, right? Like if it's the third quarter and time is chewing away and the Bucs are ahead by 17, then yeah, Green Bay's probably not going to stick to the run game, but I don't think this game is going to get to that point. So I think all 4 quarters, you're going to have to be ready and you're basically going to have to shut down the run.
So, yeah, real quick on the Packers side of things, Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, Mercedes Lewis return to practice. Dave Bakhtiari is practicing, but Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, and Mason Crosby are not. So the special teams coach, Rich Bisaccia, said he fully anticipates Crosby to kick Sunday, but Crosby didn't practice yesterday or today. So Sammy Watkins also did not practice yesterday or today, and Randall Cobb hasn't practiced all week. So Lazard and Watson returned, but Watkins and Cobb are still out.
Let's do some final score predictions and wrap this thing up. I know I said that this game is going to be close, and I still kind of stand by that, but I think the Bucs will make some distance in the 4th quarter. I got the Bucs by 10. I'm going to go 27-17, Tampa Bay on top.
So during the season predictions, you had this as a win, and I had this as a loss. I had the Bucs at the time falling to 1 and 2 because I had them losing to New Orleans. So I think I'm going to change it up. I think the Bucs are going to win. It's not going to be pretty. I don't think it's going to be pretty at all. I think it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to be a lot like New Orleans last week. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. You're going to be sitting there like, can this offense do anything? Like, you're going to be sitting there basically saying, how long can this defense hold Aaron Rodgers? Like how how many more drives can they hold him? And I think the Bucs do just enough to squeak out a win. I think the Packers injuries, especially if Watkins can't go, Watkins was their leading receiver last week. If Cobb can't go, he's somebody that Rodgers trusts. I think that matters. I think obviously Aaron Rodgers versus Todd Bowles, that matters. And I think the Bucs are motivated. I think Brady obviously practiced all week. I think he wants to get out there and get the 3-0. So I think they're going to do it. It's going to be a low scoring game. I think the Bucs squeak it out 21-20. I think they win by 1 point. I think they have more success on the ground game this week than they did last week. And I think the Bucs do just enough. The Packers are going to run the ball well, I think, but I think the Bucs defense is going to do just enough to be able to stop them. And I think the Bucs defense is going to come up with a turnover, and the Bucs offense is going to play clean football. And ultimately, that's the difference in a 1-point win.
It's going to be a fun game regardless, because it always is whenever these two teams face off. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be there in attendance at Raymond James Stadium, my first game of the year. Had to basically give up an arm and a leg for my ticket. It was, long story short, I think I'm in section 102. So I'm right next to the visiting team's tunnel, which is a pretty dope view. I like the corner view. Here's the kicker. All right. Finding tickets to this game for less than $400 was damn near impossible, but I swallowed my pride, ended up finding a kick-ass price on this seat. All right, section 102, right there in the corner. I found the ticket. Guess how much I found the ticket for?
I mean, if you don't want to say it, you don't have to.
No, I mean, I don't care.
Was it an individual ticket?
Yeah, just an individual ticket, just me going. I'm going to be tailgating with some coworkers of mine, so that'll be fun. Come see us in lot 5. You'll know us when you see us.
Okay, I'll guess 200.
200, a little cheap. I mean, it was okay, $308.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this, for a lower bowl ticket, that was the best price in the building, because you weren't going to get a nosebleed seat for less than $350, especially once you open up the resale tickets. So I get really excited, and I'm like, you know what? I found a $300 ticket. I'm going to buy this right now. That way I don't miss out, because if I don't, someone's going to jump on it. So I get it. I'm going through the checkout process. Finally get to the final page, and I'm looking at my receipt. It says your ticket, $308. Tax, $10,
fees,
additional fees. Took my $300 ticket and made it a $550 ticket. So holy shit, the Bucs better win this week, because I'm going to be short half a grand if they don't, because like, oh my God, I'm telling you.
Well, you're going to be short half a grand either way. Are you going to be short with a loss or a win?
Well, I'll be much happier spending the money in a win. It's kind of how it was last week. I told you on the podcast here, I bet against the Bucs last week, and I had to fork over $20. But you know what?
Paid that out.
I'll do it every single time. If I have to pay $20 for them to beat New Orleans every time, I'll do it.
Well, let me ask you, week 9, are you going to bet against the Bucs as well? I feel like you kind of have to. I feel like the Rams are that other team that they can't beat. So I feel like you kind of have to.
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll take one for the team. I'll figure that out when the time comes.
Well, if they lose, I'm just going to blame it on you. That's
okay. Either way, if I win my bet or my lose,
that's actually the game. That's actually the game that I'll be at. So.
Okay. Hell yeah, man. Maybe we'll have to figure something out. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We truly do appreciate your support. Next time we talk to you, it'll be on Sunday after the Packers game, but it's not going to be our usual time, as I had alluded to. I'm going to be in attendance at the game.
If the Bucs lose, Rhett's going to be down bad.
Yeah, if the Bucs lose, I'm going to be in a terrible mood. If they win, I'm going to be in a great mood. I'll probably be a little sloshed either way, but we'll jump on here. We'll do a live podcast that evening. I'm thinking maybe around 8 o'clock, give or take. We'll keep you guys updated throughout the week. And the best place to keep updated on stuff like that is over on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Follow Evan over on social media, Instagram at Bucs_daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL, and check out his written work at BucsNation.com.
Really quick.
Last minute update.
Yeah, it appears that we do know the reason for Kate Otten's absence. It appears that his mother has passed away. So he posted on Instagram 10 minutes ago a post to the brightest person in the whole world. Thank you for your endless love, encouragement, and laughs. You always found the good in every situation. So I'll try to do the same for you. I'm so thankful God gave me you as a mom. I'll smile at our memories forever. I love you and I'll miss you so much. So that is the reason for Kate Otten's absence. That is the reason he was not at practice. Condolences to Kate Otten, the entire Otten family, and yeah, so sorry to end the podcast on a grim note, but literally just saw that, and that is the reason for his absence. So we don't know if he's going to play on Sunday, but either way, football is not important right now. So take care of whatever you need to.
Yeah, incredibly sad. Sending all of our love and well wishes to the Otten family. Nobody wants to go through that, man. It is incredibly tough. I couldn't possibly imagine. We will talk to you guys following the Week 3 contest against Green Bay in Tampa Bay. Looking forward to a good game, and we will keep you posted. Any information, you can follow us right here on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew. Signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll catch you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.